Good evening, I'm Alison Tamizian Muse, your host of the Hairenik Newscast. COP29, the premier UN climate summit, kicked off today in Azerbaijan, a state with an unrepentant track record of war crimes, which culminated in last year's genocide of Artsakh, which continues in the form of systematic destruction of heritage and property. But that's not all. To this day, human rights lawyers say Azerbaijan is holding more than 100 Armenian captives, only 23 of whom it admits are in its custody, among them the political and military elite of Artsakh, which it captured following the final assault on the republic 1 year ago. The Armenian government, as of today, said it was still undecided as to whether it would participate in the conference, which has already kicked off. More critically, it has relinquished its duty to press for the release of Armenian captives, leaving the responsibility to human rights activists. Those activists range from the founding prosecutor of the International Criminal Court to Armenian church clergy, to climate activist Greta Thunberg, all who are working to turn the spotlight of COP29 into a magnifying glass toward Azerbaijan's crimes. Without further ado, let's go to the founding prosecutor of the ICC, Luis Moreno Ocampo. It's an honor to have you, Mr. Ocampo. I want to start off by saying, you being the founding prosecutor of the ICC, you made global headlines when in August of last year, you warned that Azerbaijan was perpetrating genocide against the people of Artsakh. Can I ask, why did the international community, perhaps from the UN Security Council and other bodies, fail to heed those warnings?
Well, because the Genocide Convention is an international treaty that forces state parties to do something to prevent the genocide. Therefore, what the states are doing is to ignore genocide in order to avoid the duty to do something and keep business as usual. That's the reason. And that's why the Armenians had to be consistent and clear. Yes, Nagorno-Karabakh was not identical of 1915. There were almost no killings, but it's still a genocide, because genocide is not just massive killings. Genocide includes inflicting conditions of life to destroy the group, as happened in Nagorno-Karabakh, and instilling serious mental harm. And the fact that everyone escaped is showing the mental harm, the fear. So these are two types of genocide. But even genocide requires the intention of Mr. Aliyev to destroy the Armenians. I think it's clear. But even if it's not, at least it's a crime against humanity of persecution and deportation. So, and for me, it's amazing how states and the media following the state ignore a genocide against Armenians in 2023. And I feel Armenia has to be more consistent to support the idea. Armenians believe, oh, no genocide again, it's different. No, guys, we have to. Legally, genocide requires state to act. And that's why we have to keep insisting and fighting for Nagorno-Karabakh. They had the right to go back to their land, and that's why we need to insist on that point.
Indeed. Now, genocide, as you said, it's a crime under international law, but we often hear people, including Armenians, describe it as ethnic cleansing, what happened in Artsakh, which does not have a corresponding legal statute. Can you just explain to us, what is the difference and why it's important to use terms that actually have a legal definition?
Well, when the states that not like to use genocide in the Balkans, they start to use ethnic cleansing, which is a very powerful expression. It's very nice and clear, but it's not a legal definition. So there's no consequences. That's why states like to use ethnic cleansing, because nothing happened. Instead, if the Minister of Foreign Affairs says it's a genocide, they need to act, and they don't like to act. That's it.
Understood.
But regarding, the point is even the genocide required the intention to destroy the group. And it's very clear President Aliyev has the intention. But even if not, we have to be clear what happened against Nagorno-Karabakh people is an international crime. And it's interesting, deportation of international crime could be investigated by International Criminal Court. That's why it's very important to keep this fighting, because I believe Armenia is at risk. Nagorno-Karabakh is occupied, and there are 23 Armenian leaders in jail. The three issues are connected, and we have to fight for the three of them.
Indeed. Now, numerous countries have universal jurisdiction for grave international crimes. The U.S., for example, has the Magnitsky Act, through which groups like the Armenian Legal Center for Justice and Human Rights is pressing to hold Azerbaijani officials responsible. I'm wondering, from your perspective, how likely do you see it for Azerbaijani officials responsible for crimes against Armenians in Artsakh to be prosecuted in the future? And would that be impacted if Armenia were to normalize relations with Azerbaijan?
Well, in the long run, they will be indicted. But we need a solution now, this year, not in the long run. That's why the legal efforts, the lawyer effort, should not be block political effort today and activists today. That's the point. And yes, we need an agreement with Armenia, Azerbaijan, but we need to recover Nagorno-Karabakh land, and we need to stop the illegal imprisonment of the Artsakh leaders. That's it. The three issues are connected, and we should not wait for a judge making a decision in 5-10 years.
Indeed. And you mentioned the role of governments of Armenia. Barring an official communication by Armenia, how likely would it be for the ICC prosecutor, for example, to launch an investigation into crimes perpetrated by Azerbaijan in Artsakh?
No, you have to be clear. The only person who can start a case against Aliyev is the prosecutor himself. Mm-hmm. Armenia cannot promote that. Armenia did the maximum he can, or not the maximum, but Armenia did what he had to do when they signed the Rome Statute and they became a party. That allowed individuals, including the Center for Truth and Justice, presenting claims before the court. So I think something we need to learn how to combine state efforts, including Armenia efforts, or even maybe US efforts, or Russia efforts, and the diaspora efforts. And I think that's, for me, the biggest difference. Look, in 2010, I got arrest warrant against President Bashir for genocide. And I was thinking, okay, that's the end. We got that. There will be no new genocide. However, last year, the UN Special Advisor on Genocide say there were 6 cases with risk of genocide, including Nagorno-Karabakh, but including the Tigray in Ethiopia, the Rohingya in Myanmar, the Masalit in Darfur. And that is, for me, what Armenians don't realize. What the difference? The difference is there is no diaspora of Tigray from Ethiopia. No one knows them. Everyone knows Armenians. Everyone knows what happened in 1915. And you have 7 million people around the world, very powerful, willing to protect Armenia. And we need to unleash this energy. We need to unleash this power. That's, for me, our job in the next years.
Understood. Yeah, I wanted to continue. Since you released your expert opinion on genocide in Artsakh, of course, we saw what happened before our eyes, with the siege culminating in a brutal attack, forced displacement of the indigenous population, and Azerbaijan branded Artsakh's entire military and political elite as terrorist separatists and took them captive, while the population was forced to flee for their lives. And yet you've only gotten more involved with this issue, Mr. Ocampo. You've been playing a spearheading role in encouraging Armenian activists to advocate for the release of these hostages. I was wondering what compelled you to get involved in this campaign beyond releasing your expert opinion?
Well, because my job as the International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor was teaching me about the role of people demanding justice, and the role of social media. And therefore, this year I was visiting different Armenian groups invited me to Lebanon. The Aram the first invited me, the Catholicos. Then Karekin the first invited me to Armenia. Then I went also to Germany, Austria, Spain, France, UK. And I found, okay, these people are very interesting people, but they are not working together. So we developed an idea to develop a social media campaign, allowing Armenians to talk together, but keeping their own voices. So we developed these 3 hashtags, COP29, Free Armenian Hostages, and Stop Greenwash Genocide. And we asked people to use the hashtag and put their own ideas. And it was interesting because we have 5,200 Armenians from 109 countries. 5,000 people from 109 countries. No one has that. It's amazing. Posting comments each day. And that creates a different impact because the mainstream media start to follow. So we basically make Armenians standing up and starting to fight. And in fact, this campaign made that Karekin II invite me to go to Armenia to visit him. And then he explained to me the idea he had to do this praying. And yesterday, I went here to the Armenian Cathedral in Los Angeles, and I was delighted to see all the Armenians praying. There was the Bishop of Artsakh there too. For the Archbishop of Los Angeles, plus the Bishop of Artsakh were there, and many Armenians praying for the victims. So that for me was so fascinating to see, and this happened around the world. So I think this was just the beginning. I will go in December to Armenia, invited by the Council of Europe to discuss genocide, and I would like to see Karekin II to thank him what he did, because I think it's very important that the church can play a very important role, creating bonds between all the Armenians and acting. And Aram I also invited for praying, and he was also in touch with the then candidate Trump, who promised to protect Armenians. So what I see is COP29 and this social media campaign that we did is igniting effort. It's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. We'll see what happened at the end of COP29. We'll evaluate, and we are deciding next steps, because that's what we learn. What I learned, if you want to control genocide and crimes against humanity, yes, you can present case in courts. Yes, you can understand the law, but you need to be active. You need to keep active. One of the prosecutors at Nuremberg was telling me what he learned. Luis, I learned 3 ideas. First, never give up. Second, never give up. Third, never give up. So that's the main idea, never give up. And the Armenians know that. You are resilient. When I went to Armenia, some priests were showing me monasteries were invaded, sacked, destroyed, and you always rebuild it. So I think Armenia has this resilience, and it's now the time to show it again.
And what can activists and, for example, the church do that international prosecutors cannot? And also, what can prosecutors do that we can't?
Well, the prosecutor can do a case. In fact, the International Criminal Court Prosecutor today has 2 different cases before him. One is the possibility to open a case to investigate Nagorno-Karabakh as a crime against humanity for displacement, because even Nagorno-Karabakh is considered part of Azerbaijan, because the people escaped to Armenia. When they crossed the border, they went to a country which is state party of the Rome Statute. Therefore, the prosecutor has jurisdiction. But in addition to that, and maybe even more important, the Center for Truth and Justice presented a communication on April 18, alleging that it's already an ongoing genocide in Armenia itself. They show a map with different places where Azerbaijan is already inside Armenian territory, creating conditions to remove these people. And they show also the intention to destroy the group, because for me it's fascinating when I was reading the Azerbaijan Congress decided that Armenia is not existing. Armenia is West Azerbaijan. So it's the first genocide declared by a Congress. So it's fascinating. So these are the two cases the prosecutor can do. A crime of genocide today in Armenia, but because the involvement of these enclaves when Azerbaijan is trying to destroy the group, and the removal of Nagorno-Karabakh people as a crime against humanity of deportation. These are the two situations that international court can do. So we'll see. But in the meantime, we have to do more. We have to help Nagorno-Karabakh people to recover. They are in bad condition, so we need to help to recover, to receive guarantees they can go back to their land. We need to release the hostages. And all of this will be important to protect Armenia. Armenia is basically the main target of Azerbaijan.
Indeed. Now, I wanted to just go back a little bit, and I couldn't help but noticing the poster behind you of the Argentina film. Your career, you're from Argentina, and your career began with prosecuting war crimes in your own country by, I believe, the former government. How did prosecuting violations by a government of your own country impact you and kind of set you on your path in your career?
Well, you see, this is a poster of the movie, and the young guy is representing me. So I recovered 40 years. Look, that was in 83, in Argentina, 85. Argentina had a transition to democracy. And the candidate who won the election proposed to investigate the past. And then we
Sorry, I didn't catch that. The candidate who won?
The candidate, Raúl Alfonsín, was a candidate who proposed to investigate the junta, the military junta, in a country with 50 years of coup d'etat. And we never touched the military. And this time, he proposed that people vote for him, a truth commission was created, and finally trial was established. And I had the privilege to be deputy prosecutor in that case. And for me, that was change in time, because I learned about the impact of this. And I learned about not just legal aspect, like how to investigate. I also learned about the impact of communication. Because I always use example, in the movie you see that my mother was against me because my grandfather was a general. So my mother loved generals. So she was unhappy with my case. But when she saw a witness talking, a woman who got a baby handcuffed and with the eyes covered in the seat back of the police car, my mother called me and say, I still love General Videla, but you have to write. You're right, you have to be in jail. So I learned it's not just about winning the case in court. It's about explaining to people, communicating what happened. And that's something you Armenians did very well, no? You were fighting to expose the 1915 genocide, and now you have global recognition. So I'm in Los Angeles because I'm teaching how films describe war crime and justice problems. And that's why for me, when they came with this movie about my case in Argentina, for me it was fascinating because I saw how the movie created a new understanding, not just in international, because the movie was candidate to the Oscar, one of the 5 finalists, and it got the Golden Globe, but also the young generation, those who are 20 today, they have no idea what happened 40 years ago, and suddenly they understood, and now it's like 40 years later, the case has impact. And I think that's why I feel whatever happened, we have to keep fighting, keep doing our job, keep exposing the problem, describing the problem, and in educating about the problems. That's what we have to do.
Indeed. That's an important thing to keep in mind, I think. There's the law, and there are the things on paper, and then there's the mandate and encouragement and activism of people. So
you have to say that you're right. The law is in the paper. We should put the law in the real life. And it's not just enough in the court, also in the minds of the people, in the movies. So we need to, in education, the schools. That's why the crisis today is a wake-up call to explain the problem. And not just for Armenians. My feeling is, I feel grateful for Armenians because for me, it's a battle for civilization. We are fighting for civilization, for the idea that people cannot be killed. And that's a very legal topic, and law normally is not exciting, it's not creating passion. That's why having Armenians on board with the passion and the legacy of understanding the problem is making me very happy, because you call me, I talk to Armenians around the world. And I know it's a matter of discussing more, refining what we are doing, and keep doing. They are the main force. So Armenians are the main force of civilization today.
And lastly, Mr. Ocampo, as we know, today is the launch day of COP29, the premier UN climate summit in Azerbaijan. Of course, one of the goals were set high for this activist movement was to force Azerbaijan to release the hostages. But as you mentioned, the work doesn't stop now. What are your hopes that could come out of the activism that's been going on around this conference, which has sought to greenwash genocide, and where does the campaign go from here?
Well, we still have 2 weeks on COP29. For me, it was very important try to release the hostages, but it's not, at least include in the conversations the topic of genocide. And you see the pictures, you see the issues are there. So that was for me the critical important point, because it will be shame that COP29 happened and there is no mention of Nagorno-Karabakh. That is not possible today. So, but we're still working on COP29, because what I see is a parallel between the treaty to protect climate change and genocide. In both cases, states are ignoring it. No, states are not doing the duty to prevent genocide, and states are not fulfilling their obligation on climate change. And interestingly, maybe it's the technical, but they invented something good on climate change, green funds, to promote efforts to leave fossil energy that is producing the problem in the environment and produce clean energy. And Azerbaijan is trying to use the green funds to promote solar energy in Nagorno-Karabakh, but then export more fossil fuel, which is destroying the goals of the Climate Change Convention, because the Climate Change Convention is not talking about do not burn fossil fuel in Azerbaijan, it's stop fossil fuel. And that's why Azerbaijan is not just cheating on genocide, it's also cheating on climate change. And that's a discussion we will continue to do, and will engage, because I believe the climate change people and the Genocide Convention people and the Armenian people have something in common. We need a better global order, and we will fight for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ocampo, for your time, and best of luck in this campaign.
Thank you.
Not only secular activists, but church clergy have been doing their part to raise awareness and press for the release of Armenian hostages in Azerbaijan, like Bishop Hovakim Manukyan. He's the primate of the Armenian Apostolic Church Diocese of England and Ireland, and over the weekend he joined forces with clergy across denominations to advocate for Armenian captives to be freed. Let's go to Bishop Hovakim in London. Bishop Hovakim, Welcome to Hairenik Newscast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me to join you.
So briefly, tell us, how did the idea for a global prayer for Armenian prisoners held in Baku come to be formed?
Well, it's a few months ago, I met one of my friends here in London, and she was trying to work with Luis Moreno Ocampo. She has been working with Luis Moreno Ocampo.
Of course, the founding prosecutor of the ICC, indeed.
Yeah. And they started a media campaign for the release of Armenian hostages held in the prisons of Baku. And we don't call them prisoners of war or prisoners or political prisoners. They are hostages because Aliyev keeps them as a hostages. So they started this media campaign on Twitter, and they have recruited volunteers who were tweeting information to raise awareness, actually, because they were thinking that, and we are thinking that the COP29 is a right time. It's happening in Azerbaijan. Before that, to make a pressure on Aliyev and Azerbaijan to release these hostages, because, a country with poor record of human rights, violation of human rights, a country who did genocidal ethnic cleansing last year is not in a position to host such an important environmental global conference. So we decided that through media campaign we have to raise awareness so that international community, societies, countries, politicians, they raise their voice against this and demand from Aliyev to release Armenian hostages. So you know about these hashtags, free Armenian hostages, greenwash genocide, and COP29. They are using these three hashtags, and the team was growing. So Archbishop Vigenay Kazan from the Washington, D.C., ecumenical legate of the Eastern Diocese of Armenian Church, Nuna Alekian, Luis, and I met online, and we discussed ideas, and I brought this idea that we have this in the Armenian liturgy. This idea.
That was actually going to be my next question. I know when we met last, you mentioned and highlighted that indeed in the Armenian liturgy, every week we actually say a prayer for Armenians in captivity. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I think this was incorporated in the text of our liturgy as early as 7th century. And because of invasions, Arab invasions, raiders always they came, they enslaved people and they took them with them. So people always were praying for their return and their release. So it's called Azatotsun Yekhbats Meros Gerelot. Deacons are proclaiming this during the liturgy. So we have this prayer. So when we met with His Holiness, the Catholicos of all Armenians, and we exchanged ideas, and His Holiness blessed this idea to organize, and himself, he took the lead to organize these prayer services worldwide, and also he wrote a letter to World Council of Churches, General Secretary, to other ecumenical organizations, and we organized these prayer services.
And if I may ask, what was your role as the bishop, the Armenian Apostolic Bishop of England and Ireland? What were you tasked with? Who did you engage with?
Well, my task was to organize it locally here in the UK and Ireland. So in London, I did on November 9. It's a day of ceasefire also, because 10th of November, it is a Memorial Sunday here. So I thought many people wouldn't be able to join me. This is why I turned it on Saturday, November 9, and then on 10th we did in Dublin, Ireland. So we have sent invitations to all ambassadors here in this country, just simply inviting them to come join us to pray for Armenian hostages. We have invited all church leaders and human rights activists, organizations, MPs, and our people. Of course, not everybody came, and not every embassy responded positively to our replied, not just they didn't want to come, but for us it was important for these people to see that this problem exists.
Of course.
And Armenia with COP29 cannot get along with it and just cover it up, actually. So we decided to make sure that international community knows about the problem. And then
And
we
who
had
were, if I may ask, who were some of the high-profile church leaders that joined in England and in Ireland, who have been your allies in planning this?
In Ireland, the Archbishop Michael Jackson, who is the leader of Anglican Church in Ireland, actually, he joined, and some other church leaders. Here in London, we have a representative of Cardinal, and Cardinal has sent a message. I can share you his message, and he speaks about bilateral relations between Armenian Church and Catholic Church, between that exchanges between Catholicos Gregorian II and Pope Francis, and also he shows solidarity with our people and demands the release of prisoners. And then Jonathan Baker, who is a Bishop of Fulham and representative of Anglican Church, Archbishop of Canterbury, he joined us. And also Archbishop Angelos, who is a leader of Coptic Church, but he's a very internationally well-known person, actually. He joined. General Secretary of the Churches Together in England, which is like Ecumenical Council of England, Bishop Mike Royal joined us during the prayer. And also we had people from the families. So for us, the prayer is and wasn't this prayer, but it is important because we have sent a message to these people, and people, they somehow will learn that Armenians worldwide, along with their friends, are praying for them. So they are not alone, because they were imprisoned. They found themselves in that situation because they were pioneers in our struggle. They were fighting for our cause, for the liberty and the independence of Artsakh. This is why they are now in prisons in Baku. So it's a kind of support to these people that they are not alone. The nation is next to them. And also it is a message and a kind of solidarity support to their families, because the families of these hostages, these people, are suffering also because their loved ones are in prisons in Baku and they don't have information. They have scarce information about them. And, it's important, these two things, But also, considering it's a message to Azerbaijan that international community, the churches, are demanding the release. So he has to calculate, take into account this. And if he doesn't release, it is going to grow. We are not going just to sit and finish with this prayer. The prayer sent Apostle James says, faith is dead without actions. So we are taking also actions, and we have plans, plan A, plan B. So we are going to continue on until our friends, brothers are released from prisons. I know personally some of them. I know Ruben Vartanian, Bako Saakyan, David Babayan, David Ishkhanyan. They're kind of friends and they're in prisons, and I can't just sit doing nothing. And also it is a message to our government in Armenia. It is a message that people of Armenia and diaspora Armenians, they haven't come into terms with the loss of Artsakh, and they are not going to stand it. And they have to be steadfast, protecting Armenia, protecting rights of our people. They have to know that their main objective, don't tell unrealistic stories to our people, but to work harder for protecting the rights of Armenians and the rights of Armenia.
Indeed. And my last question is, how can regular Armenians contribute to the Church's advocacy efforts, which obviously do not end with COP29, but will continue?
First thing, actually, young people, especially those who are, now everybody, but especially young people who are social media friendly, are using it. I think everybody is using it nowadays. they can tweet this information or share this information or raise awareness about these events. So, but they have to also continue praying for the release of hostages. That maybe it will not have immediate effect. I hope it will, but at least it gives hope to these people. And also, there is other things they can do. Here in London, we have sent a letter to Ruben Vartanian, and we have sent a letter. In the envelope. We put a branch of olive tree. You know why? Because when Noah's Ark was on the top of Mountain Ararat, what happened? Noah released a dove, a few birds, and then dove returned. It has an olive branch. So this olive branch symbolized freedom, because after we learned that the waters have gone, reduced, and then they can go out from the ark. A kind of this 40 days prison, they could go out. So we are sending this with the hope that soon they will be released. So it is important that everybody, Armenians, not only in Armenia, but Armenians from all over the world, they send letters to every prisoner who is in Baku, just a letter, a symbolical letter through the post, so that maybe Azerbaijan authorities will not give these letters to them, but it's important to send them letters.
Indeed. Thank you so much for all of your advocacy, for this reminder of, how important solidarity is, not only for the hostages, for the families, and as a reminder to ourselves, to the government in Armenia, to governments around the world, and of course the Azerbaijani government that's holding them hostage, that we indeed care about these people and our cause, and we haven't forgotten them. Thank you so much, Bishop Hovakim.
Pleasure, welcome. And just one thought again. Each of us could have been in their place. We have to have this understanding and support them.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is our show for today. We'll be sure to keep you updated on developments surrounding the Armenian hostages in Azerbaijan, as well as advocacy efforts for their freedom. Please do subscribe to our channel on YouTube at Hairenik, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, and X. We'll see you next week.